Hey, welcome back to another video in our series on conflict theory. This one is, I think, going to be the most disturbing video we will have, certainly this week, and maybe, I guess the one on flooding the zone was kind of rough, but this one takes everything to, in my opinion, a different level. Maybe the most disturbing video we'll see this entire course. The idea is based on a book called The Age of Surveillance Capitalism by a theorist named Shoshana Zuboff. So to contextualize it, here's where we are up to now. Conflict theory is about interest groups who compete to shape society the way they want based on their different interests. We've seen that sometimes people don't recognize their interest. Both Marx and Gramsci and Stephen Lukes talked about the idea that groups can be dominated through their own consent because they believe things that are not in their interest. Last video we saw C. Wright Mills talking about a group, the power elite, who are sort of above our ability to even conflict with them. So it's not as though our normal model of democratic pluralism, where it's just, you get upset about something, you want things to be different, so you form a group and you compete and, try to shape society the way that you would like. It's not as though we haven't complicated that theory already, but today we get into something really different. It's an idea that there is conflict going on that we may not be aware of even existing. And it's not like cultural hegemony where you could theoretically be unbrainwashed. This is a different level. So let's get into it. Shoshana Zuboff talks about, let me scroll my script down. She talks about the fact that just like C. Wright Mills had talked about how through the evolution of industrial capitalism, we'd gotten to a point where, a new point where there were people who were above everything else, the power elite. So he writes that in the 1950s. Zuboff is writing her book in, I believe, the year's 2020. So another 60 to 70 years later. And she says, we've gotten to a new stage. And this stage is not defined by a group of people who are above even the power elite, but it is based on the creation for, I think, the first time in the history of industrial capitalism, I think this is right, a new kind of resource. So we're used to, physical commodities being resources. She says there is a new kind of resource, and that resource is called behavioral surplus. It's a boring sounding word. It is ridiculously important. Behavioral surplus is defined as the totality of information about our thoughts, our words, and our actions. So the totality of information about those things. We have always thought and acted and spoken. That's something that humans just do. It's only in the 21st century that massive recording of all of that stuff became possible due to the internet and due to the algorithms that social media companies have created. So we had all of the behavior, but that surplus, that information about our behavior, only comes into existence in the age of smart machines and the age of algorithms of social media corporations. Because this information never existed before, there weren't any laws to regulate how people dealt with that resource. And what happened was, the first people to recognize its value were the tech companies. What they did was claimed it as property, and they were capable of doing this because there weren't any rules about a thing that had never existed before. So this is something that is probably a relatively familiar part of the story right now. They record all of our information and they're learning about it, and the concern is privacy. Zuboff says the concern is not privacy, that if we're focused on our privacy, we're focused on the wrong thing. She says, and let me see if I'm at my second bullet point. She said what these companies do is sell the information, sell that information of our behavioral surplus, which most of us know that happens. But it is sell it in order to companies who then can predict our needs, which is sort of probably within the story that most of us understand. But her big concern is producing our needs. And so her concern, the concern of this whole video, is the idea of corporations producing our behavior versus us being able to determine our behavior. I'm going to give you an example of this. So this is beyond them just sort of targeting us with targeted ads. So the example is the game Pokemon Go, which became a kind of a big deal in 2016. My understanding is it still is played by at least some people. Pokemon Go, sorry, I have to do this. I know you all know it, but just on the odd chance that somebody doesn't. It was this game that you played on your phone usually, where you would walk through reality, finding and collecting these Pokemon. And that was true, right? That's what happened. But the game existed for another reason. When the company who created this game, and I believe they are called Niantic, but I'm not sure I'm pronouncing that properly, Niantic, they realized what they were able to do. They were able to use what they had learned about people to create a game that would be at least semi-addictive, that would draw people in, and then they could move people wherever they wanted to move them. So while I am playing this game on my phone, I'm actually a piece in a bigger game. I am being moved just like a chess piece to wherever they want to put me, wherever they decide they're going to create these Pokemon, wherever they're going to have me go to collect, right? What they did was they sold the rights to those virtual locations of where Pokemon would be. They sold them to Starbucks. They sold them to McDonald's. So while I'm collecting my Pokemon, which I never did, I don't know why I'm using me as an example, while I am doing that, they are moving me in front of places where I might be likely to go buy something. They are literally walking me to corporations who, who paid to have a particular Pokemon be collectible in front of their store. But it's a little bit even worse than that, which that's bad enough, right? Like, I'm being moved around by corporations. Two corporations have entered into an agreement to move me from my house to their place of business. But it's even worse than that, because the data these companies collected have been used to manufacture the game. They had learned what was going to work in a game. In other words, how I was able to have my behavior modified. All of that gets incorporated into this game. It's not a random, let's hope this game works. It is studies in behavioral psychology that go into the creation of this game. And that is done by mining data on us. So they are doing research on us to figure out how to manipulate us, to walk us to places where companies are paying to have us brought, so that we will, at least hopefully, purchase their products. They learn from, I bolded this in my script. They learn from us what works to manipulate us. The main problem with this is that it's, and I didn't write this up there, but I said it before. Zuboff says, we are used to thinking about this in terms of privacy. They are invading our privacy because I've got my phone with me all the time, or I've got Alexa in my house and they're listening to me. It's not that, Zuboff says. If you're focused on that, you're missing the big thing, because you think, well, I've had my privacy invaded, but I'm still an autonomous being. Zuboff is saying the autonomous part is the part that is up for grabs now, and that we're just at the beginning end of this age of surveillance capitalism, where they are paying attention to us, they are learning how to manipulate us, and then they are going to move us around to consume, and we don't know that we're playing that game. There was never any disclosure. They are using their knowledge of us to influence our behavior without informing us that this is the game that we're playing. It's horrible, isn't it? It's just, it's creepy and terrifying to me. Okay, this is the point. This is not a new dimension of power. At least that's not the way Zuboff conceptualized it. It's a new phase of conflict based on this new stage in the evolution of capitalism. And the issue in this new phase is the question of whether it is comprehensible for people, whether they can understand thoroughly what is actually happening the next time a cool new product is rolled out. That we are being given this product and it's like a power-up in a video game, but we're the characters that are being moved around in the game. There is a term that is not a Zuboff term. It is, but it's a term from a philosopher named Timothy Morton that I think is a really important term. The term is hyperobject. One word, Hyperobject, hyperobject. And he says this is a conceptual fact so large and complex, like the internet or climate change, that it can never properly be comprehended. It's just too vast for, remember, we still have the machinery up here that evolved on the savannas of Africa. We didn't have to deal with things as complex as this, but now we have created things that are so complex, they may not be comprehensible to us. How do you fight against something that you cannot comprehend? It's not like being brainwashed or being subject to cultural hegemony where you can see, oh, okay, so they've manipulated me with propaganda to believe this. Or even with fire hosing where it's like, oh, okay, I see what they're doing. They are giving me too much for me to be able to really, they're trying to make me lose faith in the ability to find the truth. This is something that I just may not have the machinery to completely be able to understand. And it's not even a fair game because they're not even telling me that this is something you should be trying to figure out. All they're doing is loading cool stuff into a very cool product that is beneficial to me in a lot of ways, right? Like I get places instead of getting lost now because of my phone. It's just they're also using it for something else, and that something else is to produce behavior for me that they can then charge money for. Gross! Sorry, that is incredible. And it took me 15 minutes, but it was worth it because this is the new world that we live in. All right, that's it. Ironically, I'm going to finish up in the next video with a message of conflict is good, which is going to be hard to swallow after this. All right, I'll see you in that video.